Welcome on in, golf fans. It's your boy Gsluke here with our course breakdown for this week's Truist Championship. Going to get you guys ready for Philadelphia Cricket Club and to go over everything you need to know for this week's golf course to get you ready for all of your research. That'll include some course details. We'll go hole by hole, show you the shots required around this track, as well as some of the key stats and comp courses that I'm using to identify some of my top plays. And because we haven't seen this golf course before, it's going to be especially important to go through getting a sense of what to expect around this kind of venue so we can go out there and handicap this week. So without further ado, let's go ahead and hop on in with first off some of those course details and what to expect over there at the Philadelphia Cricket Club. This golf course is an old-time design and kind of looks like what you'd see at a US Open a lot of times. It's kind of wide open off the tee, more of those smaller undulating kind of greens and that northeastern bent grass that we've become used to seeing for this event. So you can see over there it's a par 70 and a relatively short one at just over 7,100 yards. If you take a look at the hole-by-hole breakdown, plenty of par 4s that are sub 400 yards, and there are a few that are towards the lengthy side, over 480 yards, even a few that are over 500 yards themselves, but a lot in that medium to short range. So I don't think that this is an overly demanding golf course when it comes to the length, and the greens are probably the biggest defense. You've got some speed to them, also some around the green shots, bunkers that look pretty hard to get out of, and I think that that's really where you're going to see some bogeys coming in, but there's going to be a lot of scoring out there. It's supposed to be wet this week, some rain on Wednesday, maybe even Thursday during play, and it's going to soften this place right up. So I don't think it's going to be an overly demanding test from the scoring perspective, but a fun one to watch because it's very different than what we usually see out here on tour. So a few things first. We got bent grass greens out there from tip to toe, and then also some ryegrass rough and some fescue rough up there in the northeast. So they have it listed at 3 inches. Wouldn't surprise me if it grows a little bit longer with all the rain that they're getting this week. And they do have relatively small green complexes at just under 6,000 square foot per green, and also with the kind of undulation that you have on these green complexes, they're going to play a little bit smaller than that 7,800 square foot. So definitely some of the smaller targets that we've had on the schedule for the last few weeks, but nothing overly difficult. I would say they're all about square in shape. They're not those rounded off edges that you normally see out there on the PGA Tour. They've got a square shape, kind of like what we're going to get in Oakmont over there in about a month. So that old time design that I mentioned before, water's in play on 6 of the 18 holes. That is mostly a creek that is running through the golf course that is giving you those. You have 118 bunkers in play, so quite a few bunkers. The ones around the green are rugged. They're kind of rectangular in shape as well, which usually adds a little bit of difficulty around the green. And outside of that, we don't know a whole bunch about this course. We haven't really seen it in tournament play for quite some time. Way back in the day, it's been used for some championship golf, but not anytime recently when we have the stats to look at. So, unlike normal when we go through all those stats hole by hole, we're not really going to have that over there on Bet the Number. So with that in mind, let's show you what it looks like overhead and the kind of shots required around this kind of golf course. It's worth noting that the routing for the tournament is going to be different than what you have here, but it is going to be these 18 holes and no holes that are changed from like par 4s to par 5s. So let's start off with hole number 1 over here with a 426 yard par 4, a little bit of a gentle movement from left to right, but it gives you a real good sense of this golf course. You can see the square shaped greens I was mentioning before, also those bunkers that have that rugged kind of shape. I would say that that's the hardest portion of this course because this about 400 yard par 4 is very typical for this kind of track. You've got some fairway bunkers that seem adequately placed. If you have a long bomber, at least at hole number 1, you can take this right one out of play, but even if you hit it into the rough, you're going to have a decent angle into the screen. I mean, like, look at it, way over here, like 30 yards left. Because of the square shaping, unless it's a back left or even a front left pin location, you're going to have no issues whatsoever. And you can do that same exercise over here to the right side. It just doesn't feel like a very hard golf course. And I've heard people say otherwise, saying that this could play like a major championship. I think if it was firm and fast, I could see it because of how difficult these greens are. But it's going to be softer this week. They're expecting all of that rain in the area. So I think it's going to be about an average golf course when it comes to that difficulty. Hole number 1, though, less than driver for most players, and then probably a 9 iron and 8 iron in at most. Hole number 2 is 429, so another one of these medium length par 4s. This one plays severely downhill off the tee and requires you to lay up because of this little bit of a creek that goes through the middle. So not a lot of penalty shots that you're going to see in that kind of a creek, but the second shot that plays slightly up the hill is about 140 yards in. So you do have some more demanding targets like here at hole number 2 on one of the smaller greens that you have around here, but a very, I think, straightforward test. I don't really think it's going to trick up these players all that much. Hole 3 is 119 yards, so an extremely short par 3. This is the shortest that you have around the golf course, so some of the other ones have a little bit more length to them. Hole 4 is 523, so the first example of what I would consider a more difficult hole. But let's look at the, how it plays off the tee. You have these bunkers to the left, which, depending on where you end up against the, side or the lip or that kind of thing, could be problematic with trying to get it up there and two. But you've got some room here to the right, as long as you're not stuck behind a tree limb or that kind of thing. You could probably get it up around the green complex. And this is like a 35-yard wide fairway here. This is an extremely wide target. And in fact, the longer you hit it down here, the tighter it gets with these bunkers kind of constricting you a bit. So I've heard people mentioning that bombers are going to be the way to play this weekend. I'm not sure that's the case. I see a lot of layups off the tee, and I see some holes like here where if you carry it like 295, 300, it might be advantageous over carrying it a little bit longer. So off the tee, I think it's a pretty balanced course. I think it favors just good off the tee play in general, whether that's with your accuracy or with your distance. The second shot feels like where you can separate yourself, because I've already mentioned some of the difficulty around the green here, and you've got some small targets. I mean, like, look at hole 4 here. This is a tiny green for the kind of shot that you're hitting in. If you can hit that green complex, that's gaining like a half a stroke, maybe a stroke to the field right there. So that's at least my take on the first few holes here. Hole 5 is a little bit of a longer par 3. It's a little bit of a larger green than what you had there at 4, but still a demanding target with a little bit of water in front of the green complex as well. Not likely going to come into play all that much unless it's a severe mishit though. Hole 6 is 491, another one of the longer par 4s out here, but this is as hard as it gets out here. Like, you have that one that was 523, this one is closer to 491. No players are going to have any problems carrying this bunker over there to the right side, and if anything, you're worried about this one to the left, and the longer you are, the more likely you are to get into that left side bunker. So I think it's a pretty demanding hole here, but one where even if you hit it in that bunker, you're probably still getting it just in front of that green at the very worst. And if you miss over here to the right side, unless you're down in that real deep gully over there, like, you're going to be totally fine to get up there as well. Hole 7 is 557, so your first par 5. This is reachable by the entire field, whether you're a bomber or not here, and an extremely wide fairway as well, so 7 should be a birdie hole for most players. Hole 8 is 366, so another pitch and putt par 4. This one here, they could move up the tee box, I would think. They could make this one drivable because of how protected it is around the green. And it feels like the tour likes to do that when you have these bunkers just in front of the green complex that make it more than just like an automatic birdie hole. Because if this was fairway in front of this green here, players would just hit it right in front of the green and then have a birdie look to pretty much any pin location. With this bunker, it adds a little bit more complexity there, which is why I think they might move up that tee box. Hole 9 is 377, so another one of those shorter par 4s. This one's a little bit longer, so they'd have to move up the tee probably 2 spots to make it drivable, but still an extremely scoreable hole there. Hole 10 is 174, so if you're starting on the back, not sure if they're going to do split tees. We'll have to see what they choose, but it would be a par 3 if you're starting on that side. Something we don't see all that often, but it's 175. It's a larger green for what you have out there. Nothing too difficult there. Next up, you have 11, which is about 440. It has a slight camber from right to left. This is probably a driver for most players because there's not much penalty if you miss the fairway here. If you hit it to the left, there's not a whole bunch that'll block you out, and to the right, you have a whole bunch of room to work with. 12 is 554, so another extremely reachable par 5. There's only 2 par 5s out here, so that's the one thing I'd say about the course is that the bombers aren't going to have a whole bunch of opportunity, but on these kind of holes, likely going to have an iron in. 13 is 450, another mid-length par 4, and not much penalty off the tee. So this is the kind of golf course where I think all of it comes in around the green, right? Any sort of trouble that you have around this golf course is going to be if you're in one of these nasty bunkers, you miss short-sided out of this rough. It is going to be 3-4 inch rough this week. So if you're short-sided, that could be another way to have an issue. I think the strategic golfers that are accurate on their second shot are just going to be in such good shape over and over again around here. 14 is 437. This is a pretty straightforward par 4. Again, extremely wide landing area out there. 15 is 244, so this is the longest par 3 out here, and yeah, this one's almost 250 yards, so you've got some difficult holes, maybe 3, maybe 4 of them at most that I classify like that, but the rest of the golf course is going to be birdie city. Speaking of, 16 is another one of those birdie holes, probably less than driver just because of how wide the landing area is if you choose not to take the big stick. 17 is 457. This is a medium length par 4, but still extremely scoreable. And if you choose to take less than driver, it is like the easiest fairway to hit in human history. I mean, I could hit it about 5 shots deep on my back 9. And then 18 is 495. So a little bit of a harder finishing hole. I'm wondering if they're going to make this internal OB down the left, because if I was playing this hole, I would just launch it down here to the left and set up a better angle into the green. If they do make an internal OB, would make this tee shot a lot more demanding. If they don't, I mean, why not just aim at these left trees and let it fly? Because if it goes straight, you're probably not going to be blocked out. You'd be very unlucky if you did. And if you push it left or right, you're going to be perfect in or close to one of those fairways. So 18, I'm kind of hoping they choose to make that decision. But even if they don't, it's a longer par 4, a harder hole around this kind of golf course. But I've heard some podcasts, I've heard some rumblings of people saying they think this is going to be extremely difficult. I respectfully disagree. I think at least 15 under par is going to win this week. Heck, might even be into the 20s with the kind of rain that they're expecting. So I think it'll be a fun test, a visually pleasing golf course for sure. Something that we don't always see out here on the PGA Tour, but I don't think it's anything overly difficult either. And now that we've seen the golf course, let's go through my key stats in my comp courses for this week that I'm using to identify my top plays. So first up, we got the core 4 shots gained categories. That would be a shots gained off the tee, approach, around the green, in your putting, like you see there in the 4 categories to the left. And I use those for every golf tournament. Now, I changed my weighting based on the golf course that's at hand. I will say that this is a second shot course, so approach play by far the one that I'm weighing the most, but some putting, also looking at some of that putting form as well. So these 4 categories, something that you can never ignore, and I just wanted to throw that out there because it is in my model every week. But the first category that really fits this golf course would be this approach from 75 to 150. And if you noticed all the short par 4s, even some of the shorter par 3s, we're going to have less than 175 in. I want to look at that approach bucket a little bit more than most. And by the time I get to my final model, there's a chance I take that out to 175, maybe even 180 yards to try and get some of those approaches in there. But that's where you're really going to separate yourself, avoiding the trouble on some of those small targets, also giving yourself a lot of birdie looks on what should be some dartboards for greens is, I think, a key separator. So number 1 player in that category is the Sepp Straka. Michael Thorbjornsen's been a really solid player in that category too, but a Brian Harman, he fits this style of golf course quite well. Wyndham Clark, kind of surprising that he's been so good in that proximity bucket, but guys like a Colin Morikawa, a JJ Spawn, and Akshay Bhatia were players that I would have assumed would have been towards the top end of that list. But of Rory McIlroy with this form, a Patrick Cantlay, a guy that I think is going to be pretty popular from a lot of the different touts and podcasts this week, all players that grade out well in that bucket. Next up, we got some driving accuracy, and I've heard people mention this being a bomber golf course, and if you couldn't tell by my hole-by-hole breakdown, I vehemently disagree with that. I think that being a bomber is always helpful, regardless of what golf course you're at, but this isn't one that emphasizes that more than others. In fact, off the tee, I think it's a washout. If anything, I would rather be accurate than long off the tee, because you want to have angles into these greens. And that's the one thing I've heard from players, even anyone that's played this golf course and that's reviewed it after the fact, is said that the greens are the stars of the show. And anytime you have greens like what you have at Augusta National, some of the harder greens that you have around any golf courses around the world, is it's always important to have the right angles into them. You think in Sedgefield greens, all of those sort of things, and oftentimes they're not always the best putters that win at those sort of golf courses. It's the best ball strikers that go out there and do so. And because this is a short par 70 out here, that's like all iron play and all accuracy off the tee, going out there kind of like the Aaron Rai method, who won at Sedgefield this last year. So he's number one in this driving accuracy. No one's surprised by that out there with Aaron Rai. But these guys like Sungjae Im, Morikawa, Lucas Glover that are very accurate off the tee, I think you have to give a bump to this week. And you'd say that about a Brian Campbell, Corey Connors, a Tommy Fleetwood towards the top end of that list. Siwoo Kim, Russell Henley, all players that I'm giving a little bit of an extra bump to. So I personally am siding that way. I don't have a crystal ball that tells me exactly what's going to happen ahead of time. But anytime you have a short par 70 and it feels like it's a second shot golf course, these are the kind of key stats that I'm looking for. So hopefully our course read ends up being spot on this week, because I think we're going to be a little bit differently doing it this way than what a lot of other people are going to be doing out there. And then I've also got this putting on bent grass. You do have these pure bent grass greens this week. We haven't had a bunch here in 2025, but some of the guys on their baseline on bent grass could be worth a few extra looks. So players that are good bent grass putters would include a Harris English. You got Max Grazeman towards the top, Shane Lowry, Ludwig Gobert. You have Denny McCarthy, who's almost won on bent grass multiple times out there on the PGA Tour before. All these guys in dark green, even the light green up here towards the top end of the list, are all going to get a little bit of a bump. And you had Glover, who was an accurate driver, also a good iron player, and those short irons could be worth a few extra looks. Justin Rose, near multiple time winner lately, potentially worth a few looks there as well. And then the last category I have on here would be sand save percentage, which is not a massive part of my modeling, right? You're talking about 5 to maybe 7% weighting over here on sand saves, but around the green, I don't think it's going to be that hard out of the rough, but those bunkers, because of that square shaping, are, I think, going to be a test. And if I could, narrow down my around the green stats and my sand save stats to only like Open Championships, I would do it that way, because they look like Open Championship greens and Open Championship bunkers around the green. So I think that if you want to look at around the green stats, you can look at your form over the last 24 rounds, but sand save percentage would be the other category that I include. And if we go ahead and put it all together, give you guys the top model score players, you have Rory McIlroy over there at number 1, which unsurprising with the kind of form he's been in, but Morikawa number 2, Shane Lowry, Sepp Straka over there rounding out the top 5, also Corey Connors there at number 5 exactly. These positional guys that are mostly iron players. These are some of the best iron form players that we have in the entire world. Guys like Justin Rose that are also good on bent grass. Patrick Cantlay, a world-renowned bent grass putter. I'm loving what this model is spitting out, because at least for what I'm looking for at this golf course, this is the exact kind of player that I'm hoping for. Like, you're still going to get Rory because of the form. You're still going to get a few bombers that are showing up because of how well they're playing. But the rest of the guys up here are your guys that get themselves in play and then go out there and attack the greens on their second shot. So that's personally what I'm looking for out there from the stat perspective. In terms of comps, I've got a few that make sense. So I've got the RBC Canadian Open, and it isn't even just this Hamilton Golf and Country Club from last year, but I think you can look at like the last 3-4 years at the Canadian Open, the last times they've been up there in Canada, because they're all very similar type of tracks. They're usually short par 70s, maybe par 71s that have bent grass greens and normally ryegrass rough. This week it's fescue, so slightly different rough than what you have up there at North, but the golf courses are normally positional off the tee and all about that second shot. So whether it's the receptiveness of the greens, it's normally pretty soft up there in Canada as well. I think that all these different courses from the Canadian Open could be used out there this week. So it's more so like event history I'm using from the Canadian Open, because of course that changes golf courses every single year. And then next up we have Muirfield Village. So this would be just for the one golf course that they play for the Memorial. It's another northeastern track, so it has similar type of agronomy to this week. It is a par 72, but it is a tough par 72. You have to keep yourself in play, and you're still going to get your bombers that go out there and find success, because it is a top level event, signature event last year. So guys like Scotty Scheffler were going out there and playing, but so is this event, right? It's the same style kind of golf course on par 70 as opposed to a par 72 over there at Memorial, and all the world's best are playing because it's a signature event. So from the field strength perspective, it's a really good crossover over there from the Memorial. And though there are slight changes out there from golf course to golf course, for example, I think Memorial is going to be much harder than what you have here at Philly Cricket Club. It does give you some crossover to go out there and use. And then the last one we have over here would be the Travelers Championship, a little bit shorter than what you're going to have this week. this week's going to have a little bit more teeth on some of those longer par 4s, but it's a short positional par 70. Similar type of agronomy because it's up there in the Northeast. This is up there in New England over there with the Travelers, and it's a Pete Dye design, so different than the AJ Tillinghouse design that you have this week, but the same kind of design things, different shaping of the greens. Travelers much more traditional style greens, the square shaping this week, but you have to set up angles into all those greens around a Pete Dye design, just like what you have at this golf course. So you can take a look at that, and just like what you had over there for the Muirfield Village, this was a signature event, right? Travelers has been elevated the last few times out, so it gives us the same kind of feel that what we're going to have for this kind of week. So a lot of the same players that were teeing it up at this kind of event last year that you can use for that exact crossover. So 3 golf courses that you can use for that crossover, and then some key stats to go out there and incorporate as well. Alrighty guys, that is all I've got for the course breakdown this week. Go ahead, smash that like button if you guys haven't already, and also subscribe to the channel so you guys don't miss any of the content to come. That'll of course include our DFS and betting preview, which will be dropping, going over all the stuff over there on Draftkings, as well as my outright betting card for this kind of event, as well as our DFS live stream over there Wednesday at 7 p.m. Eastern. That'll be over there on the Ship It Nation YouTube channel, as well as our round 1 prop live stream, which will be afterwards 8 p.m. Eastern time over here on my YouTube channel. So if you guys didn't see it last week, the live streams, which we were doing as the DFS first and then the props afterwards over there on one live stream, are now separate, right? It's the DFS over there on Ship It, prop stuff over here on my channel afterwards, just so it's a little bit easier for you guys to find the content you're looking for. But for all of that, you guys won't want to miss that, so subscribe so you guys catch all of that when it's going live. But best of luck with all the exposure that you guys are going with, and for a chance to earn a free month on my Patreon page, go ahead and comment your winning score for this week. As long as you guys are the first person to go out there and guess that winning score, you will get a free month access out there to my Patreon. And on there is where I'm posting all my projections for any given week. But it's over there for Draftkings. I'm posting my projections and modeling for every single player that's in the field. My outright betting card, all the top 5, top 10 bets I'm placing are also over there on my Patreon page, as well as all the underdog and prize picks prop stuff that I'm doing, whether it's stat averages for the DP World Tour, PGA Tour, or Live, whether it's all the slips I'm taking on all those kind of sites as well as the projections and the thought process behind what I'm doing on that side as well. So to join the Patreon page, you can go ahead and check it out down to the description. But for a free chance to earn a month of that free of charge out there, just give me the winning score out there for this kind of event, which might be tough because it's a new one out there, but you guys know I think it's going to be a little bit, or at least I think it's going to be a little bit easier than what a lot of other people think. So with that in mind, go ahead, give me your winning score down below. Best of luck with everything that you guys are going with, and I'll see you guys a little bit later on this week.